Good evening and welcome to Freedom is a Constant Struggle with your host Kilu Nyasha and engineer Arnel Valle. Tonight, our guest is Pierre Labossiere, co-founder of the Haiti Action Committee and longtime activist and advocate for the people of Haiti. And tonight we're going to be talking about the hurricanes that have hit both Haiti and many other areas. In fact, this summer, 10 tropical storms and hurricanes savaged Haiti, Cuba, other Caribbean nations, and the Gulf Coast, and conditions are ripe for still more. Haiti was hit hardest by back-to-back hurricanes, washing out 7 bridges that connect rural areas with the cities, leaving much of the country flooded, a death toll in the hundreds and rising, and 1 million homeless cut off from food and clean water. Gonaïves, a seaside city of 300,000, was devastated as floodwaters continued to rise days after Hurricane Ike hit nearly 2 weeks ago. In Texas, the number of deaths from Hurricane Ike has been put at about 50, but since some 140,000 people refused to evacuate in advance of the storm, thousands are still missing and bodies are still being recovered. Hardest hit Galveston remains closed to residents for at least another week as its infrastructure, water, sewage, and electricity was too badly damaged to support its 60,000 people. In addition, tens of thousands of residents of Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and Pennsylvania are still without electricity. Since Galveston Bay produces much of the nation's seafood, the industry is expected to lose $300 million. Cattle ranchers lost at least 4,000 animals, and more than 11,000 workers have applied for unemployment insurance. The storm's financial toll has been estimated at nearly $18 billion just for the Gulf Coast. Without further ado, I want to go straight to Pierre Labossiere and ask Pierre, first of all, how are you, and welcome to Freedom is a Constant Struggle.
Thank you, Kilo. Always a pleasure to be here. And personally, I'm okay. I haven't been in a hurricane in a long time, but when I think of people throughout the Caribbean, in Haiti, on the Gulf Coast, and very many people so terribly affected, I really, it hurts me to knowing what they are going through. It hurts very deeply.
Oh, absolutely. And what are some of the why was Haiti so devastated as opposed to Cuba? And understand Cuba was hit very hard as well, but it only suffered 4 deaths.
Precisely. In Haiti, what we can see is that the civil defense, the protection, there was an office for the protection of the community. And it was under President Aristide. It was set up with people who were trained in evacuation strategies, how to evacuate the population. These were community folks who were trained. And there were stores there to warehouse drinking water and to have supplies of food. And people who were trained to do that task, to evacuate people before and also to provide first aid in the aftermath of the hurricane. But what happened with the coup of 2004, it was a complete destruction of state apparatus. When the U.S. forces kidnapped President Aristide out of Haiti, and the paramilitaries who they were funding and supporting, providing weapons to from a military, they came in and they were chasing people out, anybody who was connected with the Aristide government. All of that was wiped out. The government buildings were burned and destroyed, and many of the trained individuals were identified as Lavalas supporters, and some were killed, others had to flee for their life, go into exile. So the system was never rebuilt. And so what you ended up having is, in the aftermath of this coup d'etat 4 years later, It happened before in 2004 when there was Hurricane Jean. And so there were over 2,000 deaths in Gonaïves itself, the city of Gonaïves, which, by the way, is one of the cities that was the birthplace of Haitian independence. And so there was a lot of work that was taking place there to repair the drainage canals under President Aristide so that water could be drained away from the city and the city would be protected. Well, as part of this coup d'etat, they destroyed the equipment. The military guys, former military and death squad guys, they set fire to the equipment, destroying it, destroyed a lot of the work that had been done to drain away the water and everything to protect the population. And so in 2004, we had this massive Hurricane Jean that really completely flooded the city. So 4 years later, after the UN forces had been there, after supposedly after the bad guy Aristide was gone, according to the US, France, and Canada, and the UN forces later on, all those great big friends of Haiti, super rich, the land was going to flow with milk and honey and all of this. The system has never been rebuilt. There were millions of dollars supposedly brought in to do the repair work of Gonaïves, but that was never done under the La Tortue government and UN occupation.
And La Tortue was the installed U.S. President after they kidnapped Aristide. They just took a Haitian businessman out of Florida and
put him in there as prime minister.
Yes.
And so the repairs were never done. And so 4 years later, we have this shameful spectacle of people knowing that the hurricane was going to come, government officials knowing that, UN forces knowing that. Nothing had been set up to evacuate the population. Nothing had been set up so that in the aftermath that there would be immediate help to go to the people. And so what you end up having is this shameful spectacle of brothers and sisters being stranded on rooftops for days and not getting any kind of water or food or the first aid.
Reminiscent of Katrina.
Very much so, reminiscent of Katrina. And as I hear from people on the ground too, there was a lack of concern because initially it was being said that nobody could get there. But then word came out that some people were getting there and were providing help for the population. You see, so there was a lack of timely response, very similar to Katrina. So you wonder 4 years later and in the wake of Katrina that at least things should have been taking place, especially with all this money that these forces have at their disposal.
Right, and it's what has the U.S. government offered to Haiti? From what I understand, it's a relatively small amount of money.
Right, I keep hearing different things, and I know that
Well, I've heard figures of 10 million, then I heard 119 million, but I mean, when you juxtapose that to the expenditure by the Republicans and Democrats of about $100 million for security alone for each of their conventions, it kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Precisely, and I was shocked like 2 days after the hurricane to hear that it was all over the press in Haiti that the U.S. Embassy had authorized the disbursement of $100,000 to aid the victim, and I said, "Wait a minute."
Is that what it was? 100,000?
Well,
maybe,
that's what
maybe.
was coming out, and I was saying, "Oh my God, this is not something to brag about,
No.
But then later on, I started hearing those figures, and I know that currently there is a bill in Congress by Congresswoman Maxine Waters and Congresswoman Barbara Lee and other members of the Black Caucus asking for an emergency disbursement of $300 million.
Yeah, even $300 million, when you think about it, is not very much money for a nation that's totally devastated. And you have 1 million people homeless, and there already was a food crisis in Haiti.
Oh, yes. And also, we had all over the nation, for example, there are 11 geographic departments there. These are administrative geographical, regions.
Right.
And so 10 of them were flooded. See, because it was 3 hurricanes in a row.
And a storm. So it was 4
exactly.
storms.
And the ground was so saturated that even though Hurricane Ike didn't really hit Haiti full speed, we didn't get the full brunt of it.
Right.
But still, the rains that it brought on the periphery were enough to cause massive flooding.
And that's also because of deforestation. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So massive deforestation, again, every time we've had good governments, democratic governments elected by the people, there has always been this move by the big countries, the so-called G8, well, among them the US, France, and Canada, because they never like the governments that the people of Haiti pick. Right. And put in there.
Right.
So they want governments that they themselves will put in the...
They want puppet governments.
They want puppet governments.
Yeah, that will allow American corporations to grossly exploit the Haitian labor.
Precisely, and that's what they want. So every time you have a people's government with a platform, an agenda of things to be responsive to the people, such as schools, healthcare centers, hospitals, ways to protect the public against a recurring national disaster. Everybody knows that every year around August and September, that's hurricane season. We know that. And when one misses us, we say, oof, we breathe a sigh of relief, but we know. So there is no excuse really for this thing to go on at such a tragic level. So what happens is every time we have democratic governments elected to implement the things that are necessary for the people, there is always a blocking of the funds. There is, by those big countries, there is always an undermining of that government, and eventually a coup, so that the government cannot function, nothing can be implemented.
Right. Let me stop you right there and invite our viewers to call in if they have any questions. Our number is 415-621-4473. And our guest, Pierre Labossiere, will answer any questions you might have or comments. Go ahead.
Yes, and so that's what we are seeing. It's the result of this pillaging of the country.
Yes.
Well, by people.
We have a call.
Certainly.
All right. Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, sir, beloved brother and sister. How are you, Keely?
Good. Thank you for calling.
Thank you very much for being here. Brother, I'm curious, where is the brother, Father Aristide? Is there any information at all about where he is?
Yes.
And I also wanted to just say thank God for the Haitian people, because they are the spirit of revolution, and that, I believe, is why they're constantly kept down, because to allow the Haitian people to be free, they may set an example for others of us who also want to be free. That's good. I get your comment on that as well, and I'll take my answer off the air if that's okay, sister.
Sure. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you.
Pierre, Aristide is in South Africa, and will you elaborate?
Yes, he's in South Africa. He's been there since his kidnapping in 2004. That was the year.
Almost, because they tried to set him down first in the Central African Republic.
That's correct. Yes, and which was being controlled actually by a puppet dictator of France.
Right.
And so it was through the great work of Brother Randall Robinson and
Maxine
Waters, and the government of Jamaica as well, and others. Amy Goodman was on the plane, had gone there also to get him out, bring him to Jamaica. And there he stayed in Jamaica for about 2 months, but the Jamaican government of P.J. Patterson was threatened by none other than Condoleezza Rice.
Right.
If Aristide was not removed from the Western Hemisphere, then if any harm befell any U.S. soldier, even if they stopped there, thought Jamaica would pay a high price. So President Thabo Mbeki invited him to come to South Africa, and that's where he's been residing since that time.
And I understand he's teaching at one of the universities there now, and his wife and his children are there with him.
Precisely. Precisely.
The people are still demanding his return, however.
Yes, he remains very popular. The people are demanding his return, and the caller was correct in this the spirit of resistance. Our people have been resisting against the because they look at us as being beasts of burden. You know, they look at African people as being beasts of burden, to be work from can't see in the morning till can't see at night. And so in Aristide, he symbolizes the resistance that the people have always exhibited and have laid their lives for, and have bled for, have died for. So, and for somebody in Haiti to spot Aristide button or to come out on his birthday in huge crowds is really another saying, saying, hey, we will not accept what you want to do to us. We will not stay in our place. Our place is liberation. And that's why the people are fighting for the total the liberation of our nation.
Absolutely. And Pierre, what can people do to help Haiti now? Because, I mean, first they had the food riots behind, the doubling of the price of rice, for example, and other food commodities. And there were literally food riots a few months ago. Right. And then this devastating series of storms that has just left people in dire conditions, because the houses to begin with can just be blown apart. Certainly. They're made out of corrugated tin and just propped up with sticks.
Yes. And speaking to the brothers and sisters in Haiti, and actually they told me to please give their regards, their love to the community here in the Bay Area, and to all the brothers and sisters who have stood up, who continue to stand in solidarity with them. It's going to be a long-term. It was a long-term project to help them rebuild from the aftermath of the coup d'etat of 2004. And you stated it, in the aftermath of the imposed starvation on the people of Haiti. Because what happened, the hiking of the food prices, it's something designed, it's man-made. It's designed to impose starvation on the people and to punish them.
Exactly.
But what people can do right now, so we have an organization, the Haiti Action Committee, and people can go on our website. We are connected with the Vanguard Foundation, Vanguard Public Foundation, and we have the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund. So people can send checks, and if you go on the website, you'll see the information how to and read about our
HaitiAction.net or HaitiSolidarity.net.
And that will give you information on how you can support with funds, because that's going to be needed in order to help the grassroots organizations to rebuild what they have lost and to continue to struggle for liberation.
And also, since everyone doesn't have a computer and can't go to a website, do you have an address for the Vanguard Foundation?
Yes, and but when you make out a check, you can write HERF/Vanguard, that stands for Haiti Emergency Relief Fund /Vanguard, and it's Vanguard Public Foundation at 383 Rhode Island Street, Suite 301.
And that's 383 Rhode Island Street in San Francisco, and it's Suite 301. And do you have a zip code?
94103.
94103. Please give generously, folks. People are starving. People are homeless. Over 1 million people are homeless in Haiti right now. It's extremely important that you give very generously. And I already put my money where my mouth is. So please, give.
And also the political support is very important. We are fighting right now for the liberation, which means the UN needs to get out of Haiti, the UN forces. We have a number of political prisoners who need to be freed. So in addition to immediate assistance or long-term material assistance, the political struggle, we need the support of brothers and sisters to help us.
A luta continua.
A luta continua.
Absolutely. And we have just a couple minutes left, but if you could just very briefly talk about Dr. Paul Farmer's work.
Yes, and I mentioned what he was doing. He was one of the first groups. Dr. Paul Farmer is a medical doctor, wonderful man, and Haitians look upon him as our beloved brother. We love him as much as Aristide. And he is really a wonderful man who set up, as a young medical student, came to Haiti, set up, worked with an existing clinic in one of the poorest rural areas of Haiti. And now the clinic has gone into a full-fledged hospital, where the very poor have access to top-notch medical care. Because part of his thing is that why should the best medical care be only made available to the rich? The poor have to get that too.
Right.
And so at the hospital, the public, the patients are organized where they take care of their own health, where I hate to use the word empowered, but it's really taking charge of their own health, and they have a patient's bill of rights. And one of the things that they do there with Partners in Health, it's pretty much to help, to assist people in terms of good living conditions, so that preventable diseases do not kill as many people so in that community they've done a lot.
And they can find, they can go to Partners in Health, PIH.org, I believe?
I believe so, yes.
All right, and I thank you so very much, Pierre Labossiere, for joining us on Freedom is a Constant Struggle. I want to thank our viewers for watching, thank Arnell Valle for board opping, and next week we're going to have Pam and Ramona Africa all the way from Philly, who are here for the Critical Resistance 10th Anniversary Conference at Laney College, beginning next Friday and going through Sunday. Again, thank you for viewing. I'm Kilu Nyasha for SF Live. Power to the people, and free all political prisoners.